great to be here, and I'm glad you can see my screen. And the title of the project that we did was Family Learning, Fairy Tales and Folklore Through an Intercultural Lens. And as Fergus said, I'm one of the ALOs in Tipperary. I'm looking after the northern part, and Idel is one of the tutors that work with us in the service. And I want to especially say a welcome to some of the participants that worked with us on the course, because they're invited, and I know that some of them are joining us. So, and as Fergus had said, please do put in any participation questions, observations that you have as we go on, because that's how we learn and how we improve practice as well. So where did it all start? There is something very universal around stories. It's almost archetypal. And there's something about my own story, or storifying our experiences, shaping our identities, building resilience, where we fit in our own story, being the hero in our own story, or survival stories of surviving, helping us to see how a hero has dealt with different situations, or a heroine. And I could see the relevance of all of this, but also the intercultural dimension, because I'm intercultural myself, and we were planning this for a group of intercultural people in a new community in our location or locality. So because I am originally from South Africa, I could see the links between the different cultures. And Adele and I often have conversations about literature, so she kind of was a natural fit to this. And we played with the idea of this theme and trying it with a group of asylum seekers that live in Borrisokane, and as a summer project. So this was all good and well, but it was also lockdown. So we had to kind of decide how to do this in a completely different scenario. So we shaped our theory and our practice and the interchange of ideas, but we didn't initially start out with a theory and practice. We started with an idea. And we worked then as adult education. Obviously, our ethos and values come into it, and it shaped what we planned. So it ended up fitting very well with the methodologies, guiding principles, and the policies of literacy work, family learning, as well as our ETB's vision, mission, and values. And then this comes straight from our original planning document, that we wanted to engage asylum seekers in a family learning program. We wanted to explore exchanges between their home culture and the host culture, so that we could enrich what we know, and hopefully they learn better and more about where they are now. We want to help the participants understand their new environment better. And for ourselves, there was a different agenda too, because we had never delivered anything only online. We wanted to try Teams, because over the initial lockdown, we would have done a good bit of work through Zoom. But Teams was only new to us, and we wanted to see, how do you do this on Teams? And both Idel and I were doing the summer school on universal design for learning. So that was very providential almost, because we were learning around how to do this. For instance, one of the things that really stuck with me was that you don't deliver for more than 10 minutes. You need to get feedback from the people that are on the receiving end. So we built that in through the different activities in the songs and crafts and things. So, and also to give people options through using good UDL strategies. We wanted to support the moms, to support their children's language, reading, literacy, numeracy development, but not ESOL as such, because the ladies and the moms and their children all had a good enough level of English. Like myself, English is my second language. English would be probably their third and fourth language, but they were quite fluent in it. But it was the piece about probably the Irish language influences on the English language that I was clueless when I came here. I didn't know that Kill, in all these different Kilcommon, Kildare, referred to church. I had to figure that out. Even the place where they live, Borrisokane, the word Boris, it is in so many Irish place names, but you wouldn't know that it means downland unless you kind of hear that from somewhere. So we also wanted to align with the relevant strategies of the education sector in Ireland. So this is Borrisokane. There's some pictures from there. And you will see on the map where the red line is. That is, so it's in the northern part of North Tipperary. And this is a screenshot from the website, the top part, with the different pictures. You can see the well there. I'll refer to it again. And then on the website, it says hospitality and friendliness can be found wherever you go in Borrisokane. And that says a lot for the local inhabitants. And actually, Borrisokane is my hometown as well. So I can attest to that as being, having experienced that. So on the left then is a picture in the left bottom corner where the asylum seekers live. So they have, each family has a self-contained unit, and there is an office more or less there where the beech trees in their autumn colors are. There is an office that deal with the families, and they were our first point of contact. So how did it look practically? There was obviously, as I've spoken about, the planning stage, then there was the delivery stage, evaluation, and we're looking at progression. So the planning was there was a lot of talking, and as I've mentioned, the planning document and so on. And then the delivery, we talked a lot about that as well, how to do that practically during a lockdown situation. So, and it was for 6 weeks, 2 hours, once a week. And for 10 o'clock till 12 o'clock, which the moms had said it could have been a little bit later because some of the kids found 10 o'clock a little bit early. The online delivery was a big learning curve for us. And I remember that the first week I had said to Idel, I'll do the first week, because I knew then if it was doable or not, because I couldn't expect somebody else to do something that I can do, which I just felt that I wanted to test this myself and see if it's going to work, because we had to get the moms online, and they had to have be able to gather the family around the device that they were using. And how is it going to work? With the screen sharing work? Will the sound of the stories that we were doing, or the songs, will that work? So there was a lot at play for us, but we worked very strongly as a team, because whatever I was going to do, Idel had, so that if my internet wasn't working or if my screen wasn't sharing, that she could do it. And we also have a family learning resource person who joined us halfway through, and we relied very strongly on her to backup Mary Jo. And then our administrator in the office, Nicola, was invaluable, because she was printing and collecting, making up activity packs and dropping them out and so on. So it was very much a team effort. So even designing the poster initially was, how do you do this, that it is inclusive? How do you do, so these are different variations that we looked at. Some were too Irish, some were too European, and so on. So we eventually went with something like Bilbo Baggins there, where it was mythical and yet real. Whether it was the best way to go, I don't know, but it kind of worked for us. And this was the poster that we used then. We put it up around the center. We sent it to the reception there, and we used it as a starting point. And as I said, it was a very organic process. But when I sent this picture to Idel, I remember she said, yeah, that'll work because of the well. And I was initially a bit worried that it might be a little bit too Irish, and what the Irish people would call Gidlei. It might have been too much of that, but she thought it meant, and we started working with that, because the word Tevrod Aron, meaning the well of Ara, it linked it very closely to location. And as I said, and you will see a picture of it in a minute again, there is a well in the community park in Borrisokane actually as well. So, and I, being African, I know how important the water and the well in the village would be. So where does it sit then in the broader context? As you know, there has been the launch of the family learning guidelines in, I think it was April of this year. So just one quote from there I want to read. Throughout the study, we understand family literacy as both the literacy practices in individual families and the FED programs that support parents to learn the skills and practices needed to help their children become effective and contented learners. Family literacy describes the uses of literacy and numeracy within families and communities, especially activities that involve 2 or more generations. Family literacy also denotes education programs that help to develop literacy and numeracy learning in a family context, which was what we adhere to. And within the broader policy context, then the new FED strategy, transforming learning, 2 of the guiding principles in there would be fostering inclusion and digital capacity building, which sits very nice. Both of them sit very nicely with the program because we did inclusion on many levels: the intercultural, linguistic, geographical, digital, relational, and then the quote there shows that it very much wants to engage literacy in the personal, family, social, and community contexts. And it doesn't have to be accredited. In this case, it wasn't accredited because it was such a short program. Within our local ETB, our vision very much is to enrich lives, to be progressive in how we go about things, innovative. And as you will see the picture there from a sculpture that's outside head office with a student in the center, we tried to keep the student in the center during this as well. And our mission then would be again to create diverse opportunities and to enable learners and communities to unlock their potential. The values sit very nicely with what we try to do too, to be inclusive. We try to be as transparent and link the parents and everybody that was involved into the program, be innovative, professional and respectful. I hope we were all of those things. We tried anyway. And then there are the pictures of the wells that I mentioned. The first one is in the town park and the other one is then on the poster. So we use these themes, different themes, to build the program, and we ask the parents and the participants, the children as well, what they would like to get to be involved and included. So we started with a well, and then we moved on to magical creatures and animals. We had food and music and mythical heroes. And coming back to the 10 minutes of input and then trying to engage people, we used things like storytelling and songs and crafts. It was a lot of work for particularly Adele. It was quite labor intensive, but I think we enjoyed it thoroughly. Universal design for learning, I have already mentioned, to give options in how people respond and engage with the learning. We try to find the touch points between cultures and build the program around that, highlighting the literacy and the language awareness and as I said, the Irish-English interaction, intercultural interactions, and how to help the moms then as well to build on what happened online class time, to build on that at home. And I think the main thing we wanted to do, we were all sitting at home, wanting to have fun and to engage in some interesting way, and I hope we achieved that. Then this is the last. It's a bit content rich, but I just want to run through that. The right hand side, the supports first. The things that made it easier for us was that all the families were in one location, that they had Wi-Fi available, that there was already an internal WhatsApp group within the center. That was the way that the office there distributed information, so they could distribute and do the publicity for us through that WhatsApp group. The learners were digitally quite able. It did take a little bit of work to get all of us online at the same time, but people were able to do that. And we had a budget for materials. As I said before, we had great staff support. the reception office in Borrisokane, in the center there, were very cooperative as well. And the attitude and the enthusiasm of our participants were just that really, I left every time after a class on a high because it was just so enjoyable. There was a lot of intergenerational learning happening. It was summer holidays, so people were at home, and good relationships all around supported the process. And then the challenges, there was obviously, it was COVID-19, so we couldn't meet in person. We were working from home, so we relied very strongly on Nicola to, in the office, to print things, to collect things, and sometimes I did and sometimes she did drive the activity packs out to Borrisokane, because our office is in Nina. And we had to make sure all the resources that were needed for the learners were provided. And we were working with a mixed age group. Language wasn't a major stumbling block, but we had to be aware of that. Bandwidth wasn't always what we wanted it to be. And because we were in people's homes and not everybody was involved in the course, we had to be mindful of that. Data protection as well. We did set up a WhatsApp group with the families that were participating, but we got specific permissions from them to do that. And it was only my work phone that was used for it, not private phones. So that's how we contained that. We used the virtual learning through Microsoft Teams, which was all new to us for doing something like this. A lot of time for preparation, and it was all new because it's a pilot. It was the first time we were doing it. So without the supports, I'd say we wouldn't have been able to balance the challenges, but we did, thankfully. So that's all I have to say. I'll hand over to Idel now. Thank you very much. And any observations or improvements that you could think of, please add it in the chat box that Fergus can.
In Borrisokane in North Tipperary. The nationalities included South Africa, Kenya, Zimbabwe, Nigeria, and the Congo. The learners were of mixed educational backgrounds and had mixed levels of English language proficiency. Now, as Esther said, this is content rich, but I'll just quickly go through the course topics that we covered. So we looked at the cultural significance of wells, rivers, and lakes. We also covered some Egyptian and African folklore. We went into understanding Irish surnames, maps of Irish counties, county colours, rivers and lakes. Some of our stories were the story of how the River Shannon got its name, the legend of Cathach, magical creatures in my culture, the story of how Loch Derg got its name, the salmon of knowledge, the children of Lir, native Irish birds and animals, and birds and animals from my culture. And we did stories like how the River Shannon got its name, because that's quite local. Loch Derg is local to the region. The legend of Cathach is based in Ennis and has to do with the Shannon estuary. And the story of how Loch Derg got its name, again, is very relevant to the locality. Our weekly content, so the structure followed the format of each week we did at least one myth or legend. There was a comprehension activity, colouring and drawing activities, intercultural activity, craft activities, and songs built into each week. Core teaching and learning principles involved were as follows. So we took a learner-centred approach, and we took a strengths-based approach. One example of that is by choosing folklore, fairy tales, myths and legends as our, I suppose, main topic each week. We knew that this is very universal, as Esther has already said. So everyone involved in the project would have something to participate and to build on. The project was literacy and new literacies focused. So not only did we, I suppose, go into reading, writing, spelling, listening and speaking skills or typical literacy skills, it was new literacy focused because of the digital element, where the learners and ourselves became upskilled in the area of using Microsoft Teams for online learning. Participatory and active learning were the backbone of the project. We also endeavoured to include visual, auditory and kinesthetic methodologies. And we used a multimedia approach. So we used audio, visual, videos, songs, and so forth. And in doing so, including our crafting, we ensured a sensory learning experience. We used a dialogic story reading style, so learners didn't encounter the stories in a passive way. They were very much involved in questions, answers, comprehensions, and lots of extension activities as well. As Esther said, we applied principles of UDL, or Universal Design for Learning, and I'll highlight that later in my presentation. Group intergenerational learning was very important as well, and fostering positive learning relations between the mothers and children was very to the fore. Absolutely, we had to include learning through fun, and we also rewarded participation and success. An important pedagogical approach that we used was the flipped classroom. And just to really briefly outline, in the traditional classroom, learners have some material in advance of class, and then in class, that material is explored further, but usually in a, I suppose, hierarchical way, in a lecture style. And then in the aftermath, learners go away and try and understand the material, I suppose, independently. Whereas in the flipped classroom approach, learners have an opportunity to prepare material, encounter all of the information in advance of class, and then rather than hear the same material again in a lecture style, the time is given over to where students practice applying the key concepts and have opportunity for face-to-face interaction with the tutor, and can explore and develop understanding and learning in that scenario, rather than going home and trying to do it for homework. So, for example, with our storytelling, the comprehension activities were completed in class as opposed to for homework. And then in the flipped classroom, students can check their understanding and extend their learning. And in our case, it was done through fun activities like the crafting. So getting started in week one. So it was very important to spend some time on Microsoft Teams in week one. And also very important to establish connections through giving time over to introductions and developing rapport. It was important to us to use a Freudian model where we invited suggestions from the participants on the course content and what they wanted to learn. And we did this at regular intervals throughout the course. So even if we were proffering suggestions on content, we allowed it to come organically from the learners around what they wanted the focus to be. In week one, as Esther said, we chose the topic of wells and rivers and explored the cultural significance of these. And we very quickly found that they're of huge importance across all of the cultures that were involved. Our activities were included an Egyptian folk tale called The Well of Truth. And instead of this being read, it was actually done in a YouTube video, and it was particularly, I suppose, appropriate for the younger learners. We also heard African cultural stories such as Mabalel and the Nyaminyami river god, the spirit of the Zambezi River. And the main activity in week one was a picture selection activity. And if anyone is new to literacy practice, this is a great tool to have in your kit because it's very simple, but it's very effective. So for example, here are some pictures that we showed the learners. You'll see they're all related to wells one way or another, and different interpretation of wells across the world. And if you're doing a picture selection activity, the method is as follows. So you provide a selection of relevant pictures. Now I would recommend numbering them for easy reference afterwards. Ask the learners to select the picture that resonates the most with them. Take note of the number as well. Set time for selection process, so give over 2 minutes maybe from the activity for that. And then ask learners to individually explain their choice to the group. Now you can do variations on this as well. So the think, pair, share approach is where you ask learners to discuss their choice in pairs. Then set time for discussion again, for example, 3 minutes. And ask the learners to feed back to the group and explain their choice. Or you can ask learners to explain their pair work partner's choice. So the rationale for this is that it provides learners with something tangible to initiate discussion, particularly in a week 1 setting. It allows learners to speak personally, and in doing so, this validates learners' individual experience. The think, pair, share variation reduces the fear of individual exposure through group work, and the variation of learners feeding each other's choice back initiates interpersonal communication and helps to establish positive group dynamics. So following on from week 1, we then moved to selecting, designing and editing text for the following weeks. So we chose to use myths and folk tales very purposefully, as Esther already explained. And as Dr. Rebecca Long highlighted in her webinar previously, stories are built on equilibrium to disequilibrium to restored equilibrium. And this is a very productive way of teaching children about life. We sourced appropriate textbooks. They happen to come from Poolbag in a Nutshell series. And this particular series of books had, bright, inviting, engaging pictures, lots of colour. So they're very appropriate for our age range. We photographed and saved the pictures, and we edited the text. Now, this actually was highlighted to us by the mothers that they really appreciated the text being edited, because in myths and folklore, there can be dark moments that could be frightening to a small child. So we very carefully edited out anything that might fall into that category. Using the photos and edited text, we created PowerPoint stories. And if you're using this as a tool for delivering online or even in class, but particularly online, we did everything like inserting animations and transitions just for that extra bit of engagement. And when it came to reading the actual stories, yes, we had to get a little bit silly and do dramatic readings. I'm talking panto style, where if a protagonist was, being particularly heroic, we cheered him on. And if a naughty character was standing in the way of our hero, well, we booed and we hissed, and we carried the story along with lots of added drama. And it was great fun. I just want to draw your attention to something here called a map moment. Now, I've already mentioned it, but if you see down here on the corner, it says map moment, highlight the River Boyne on the map, find and colour County Meath in green and gold. And you might notice that I'm using tools here to operate a laser pointer, and all of these were particularly useful when we were delivering. So the map moments, these were built into each story. The learners were supplied with A4 maps. Now you can see here on the right hand side of the screen, there's a county map and there's a map of the rivers and lakes. The learners had these in hard copy format in A4 size, so they weren't trying to work off something as small as this. As you saw, the learners were asked to find the relevant county and then to shade in the county colours. So just again, for example, I would operate my pen to shade in if we were dealing with County Tipperary, and I would colour in on screen. I'd colour half the county in blue and I would colour half the county. Okay, sorry. And then I'd colour the other half in yellow. And this worked well because the learners at home were able to follow suit, and by the end of the project, their maps were actually quite filled in, given that our stories covered a number of counties in Ireland. And we did the same with the rivers. So when we'd be talking about a particular river, I would ask learners to then identify it on the map and shade it in with their highlighter. So say, for example, if we were talking about the River Shannon, and again, by the end of the stories and the end of the project, the map of rivers was quite filled in as well. So the rationale for this is that it is absolutely participatory or active learning. It was engaging for the entire age range. It also allowed us to use a social practice model where learners were making links between stories and real life. And doing so, the learners were building local and broader knowledge and vocabulary. And the texts in question we used were actually the Fallon's Map Workbook 1 from CJ Fallon. I mentioned earlier a comprehension tool that we taught the learners, and this was based around keywords. So in advance of hearing the story, the learners would be supplied with, again, A4 size copies, hardback or hard copies of a quiz or comprehension activity. And they would read the questions, and then I would invite them to find and highlight the key words. So again, using my digital pen, I would ask learners to find the question word. So what, type of creature is a salmon, and highlight salmon. And we would identify and highlight the keywords in each question, and the learners would do the same at home. And then when they hear the story, they're already, I suppose, conscious of the words they need to listen out for. And the rationale for this is that it's very much, again, participatory or active learning. It's again, our dialogic style of story reading and engagement. The learners aren't just listening to stories passively. We also differentiated the questions for the age range. So if you look at question 1 there, what type of creature is a salmon? The 3 or 4-year-old might be able to answer that. But question 5 is higher order, because it asks, name one thing that a young man must do to become a member of the Fianna. So there would have been maybe 3 or 4 things, and the learners had to listen to those and be able to fill in one, and that would suit an older learner. Doing these kind of tools, or using these tools, reinforces and consolidates knowledge. And this is very much a tool for future comprehension exercises in school. Okay. So a simple concept was our colouring activities. But again, you have to remember we were working with, I suppose, a disparate age range from 3 to 16-year-olds. So this allowed for kinesthetic learning. It was very much a fun and enjoyable extension activity. Again, we differentiated our options for the age range involved. So if you look at the top picture, that's suitable for a 3, 4, 5-year-old maybe. But the picture below it was suitable for our older learners. And we got some beautiful artwork back based on the line and their interpretations of the line. These are also suitable for before, during, or after class. So in downtime between classes, the learners could be filling their time with this. And it became a very important tool for retaining younger children's engagement. So if you, I suppose, imagine we're trying to retain the attention of 3-year-olds up to 16-year-olds. And if the older learners were doing something maybe around math moments or comprehension activities, the younger learners could be in the background colouring at the same time. So we still held everyone together for the duration of the class each week. Our craft activities proved to be one of the most successful and enjoyable elements of the project. So for the method, the learners were supplied with craft materials in advance of class. The craft related to the weekly topic. I would do a craft tutorial at the end of each class. And then the learners completed the craft activity during the weekly interns. So this again is the flipped classroom, I suppose, where this is the extension activity that's done at home, where I suppose the working out of the topic has already happened in class. And then the following week we'd have a craft display, and this was really lovely to see the learners coming back with what they had created and their interpretations of the craft itself. Again, this is kinesthetic learning. It's also very much a sensory learning experience, particularly for our younger learners. It was fun and enjoyable. It allowed for active participation. The mothers quite enjoyed it as well, and it was engaging for all ages. It allowed us to provide tangible materials for the learners and then for them to have tangible outcomes. It fostered positive learning relationships through family group work. There was a nice sense of achievement for the learners to have something to show for each story and each week. And it also provided an opportunity for literacy development. So if you see the worksheet that I've displayed here, this worksheet allowed the learners to practice writing, and it also has a close activity built into it to allow them to practice spelling. And you can see that it is based on crafting material and tools that they'll be using in school again, so it was quite relevant. And here's some examples of the craft that the learners produced. So we have a couple of interpretations of the salmon of knowledge, You have the children of Lir there, the four swans. You also have Cullen's hound from the story of how Cuchulainn got his name. And at the centre there, and I suppose at the root of all of this, we have our well. Song activities were also very important in the end, it turned out. So again, the flipped classroom, the learners received the videos and song words in advance of class through our WhatsApp or email, and they had time to practice then. And using the videos was great because the younger learners were engaged, but it also allowed the learners to become familiar with the words and the music involved. This again, it was a fun and enjoyable extension activity suitable for all ages. As we know, music is a universal language. It also promotes phonological awareness for speakers of other languages. It was a moment for expansion of cultural knowledge and experience and a rich opportunity for cultural sharing. So throughout the whole project, it was very important that we were promoting an intercultural learning experience. I suppose we achieved this by, first of all, establishing rapport with the mothers and children from week one and giving time to that. One simple thing we did was we gathered the children's names in week one, and we then provided them with a Celtic style letter, which was the initial of their name, first initial, and the learners then went and coloured these in, and we heard afterwards that these are now dotted around the homes, stuck on bedroom doors and so forth. So that was a nice way to establish an intercultural connection. In week one as well, our picture activity on around the wells was very important because it, I suppose, initiated dialogue and established group connections and dynamics from week one. And then as we went on to discover the folklore around wells, waters and rivers was very much universal as a theme, and every culture had something to say on that. Again, when we were talking about magical creatures, we explored magical creatures in my culture. So if you look at the activity sheet that I have on the right-hand side, magical creatures in my culture, you'll see pictures of some well-known Irish creatures and mythical figures such as the banshee, the fairy, the puka and the leprechaun. So we explored those, naturally a sanitized version for our younger participants. And after discussing the Irish creatures, learners were then invited, if you see here, do you know anything about magical creatures in your culture? Write a few words in the box below. Or if you prefer, draw a magical creature that you know about. And that's just one example of UDL in practice, where if learners weren't confident to write or preferred to draw, they had different options on how to represent their knowledge and learning. Similar worksheets were created for topics around animals and birds from my culture. And as I've already said, we had songs built into our weekly schedule, and there was one particular class that stands out for me where the mothers and children all participated by singing songs from their culture. Some of them had actions and drama built into them, and it was a really wonderful and rich intercultural experience. So at the end of the course, it was important to get feedback, particularly because this is a pilot. The methodologies used were anonymous feedback collected through Microsoft Forums and an online focus group. Positive things that came back in relation to the children were the children enjoyed reconnecting with their friends that they hadn't seen for some time, so they enjoyed seeing them online. They enjoyed the stories, they loved the crafts, and they look forward to the activity packs and treats each week. And the older children enjoyed the challenges and I suppose maybe the extended learning. The mothers told us that they enjoyed the stories as well, and it turned out that they were suitable for all ages. They also enjoyed learning things in relation to Irish surnames, place names, and Irish geography, which is of course not just interesting, it's also very practical. They appreciated the editing of the stories to suit the younger children. They also commented that they felt motivated to work together as families, and this led to some family bonding. A lovely one was that they discovered one another's creativity and hidden talents that they mightn't otherwise have. They also appreciated the flipped classroom approach, where the potential stress of having to do homework and fill in comprehension activities or answer questions was taken out of the equation, because that was all done in class. They also liked the weekly structure by participating in the project, and they liked that they were provided with reading resources for outside of class, because we gave hard copies of all of the stories. Some other comments that came back were it combined things for the mothers and the different ages and was interesting for everyone. So that was reassuring to us to know that we had managed the mixed age range. It gave me ideas on how to read fables to my kids. Again, that was nice to hear, because maybe it inspired a starting point around reading for some families. We all love different things, so every individual was looking forward to their favourite part of the course each day. Again, that was good to hear, because it meant that there was something in it for everybody. It was good to do something with the kids that was not on screen, the reading and craft. I will continue doing things like this, as it is good for bringing us together. Otherwise, we just all sit on our phones. And I suppose we're all guilty of overdoing the screen time, so that was nice to hear as well. And this comment, I suppose, drew it all together and brought us back to the context that we were in, a COVID context and the context of asylum seekers. This is a very different time for us all with the pandemic, so the course helped with the stress relief, memories of where we are coming from, and the spirit of togetherness. So some suggestions that came from the mothers as well was that there was a preference for Zoom. However, moving forward, the ETB is committed to using Microsoft Teams, as it is GDPR compliant. Some others wanted an afternoon schedule, as Esther's already mentioned, because the older children would have woken up by themselves, but also because they'd have their morning chores done. Some wanted longer classes, but did qualify this by saying that they appreciated that might prove difficult to retain the attention of the much younger learners. And as Esther mentioned, they requested a certificate of attendance. In terms of follow-up and progression, learners were invited to display their craft work, but due to COVID restrictions, this will be done at a later date. Learners were provided with certificates of attendance and gifted a book on Irish fairy legends for children. And Esther mentioned the background report and the guidelines that were published this year in relation to family learning. And book gifting is highlighted as best practice if you are running a family learning program, because naturally it provides the learners with reading resources for the future in the aftermath of a course. One mother wrote an article for the Tipperary ETB Christmas Annual about the course, so it'll be lovely to see that in print. And learners were informed of a future family learning project based on creative writing. So, as many reports on family learning show, engagement with family learning projects often leads to progression for learners, which of course is a very positive outcome. So that is actually, it's bringing me to the end of the presentation. And I'll just pop back to our first slide, and maybe Fergus, you'll pick up from there.
Adele, thanks a million. That was wonderful. Really some great ideas, and you can see from the quotes, the evaluations at the end, what it meant to people, bringing us back where we came from, and turning off screens and reading and drawing together. It was just wonderful. So well done, Esther and Adele, sound great. And thanks for a great presentation. We have a few minutes left, so if any of you have any questions or comments or ideas for Esther and Adele, if you could type them into the questions/chat function, I'll read out what's there at the minute. There's one or two things coming in. Bernard Mackey's asking, would the class have worked as well if you could have met in person?
I hope it would have worked, Fergus. I'd say it would have had a much better opportunity, because we would have had the chance to interact personally, which in this case it was harder to do because we had to do it through screen. So I hope that once life has come back to the way that we can easily move around in classrooms, that we would definitely try something like this.
Right, thanks. Aoife Walsh from Fingal Libraries is asking, I'm just wondering what resources you use to inform your session, and I know you have answered some of that, Idel. For example, I know tutors.ie is a great source of Irish folklore. Hold on, that just scrolled down on me, so I missed the rest. Sorry. I know tutors.ie is a great source of Irish folklore, but are there equivalent resources for the folklore of other cultures?
Okay, well, I suppose for us, we presented the Irish side, if you want to put it that way, and we allowed the learners then to present to us their side. We would, I suppose, have been avoiding a banking model in relation to their side very sensitively, because we very much wanted their story to be organic from them.
Okay, yeah.
Can I say something on that, Fergus? Just because there was one moment for me that really stands out, and that is when they had to draw a magical creature from their culture. And one of the older kids showed us a picture of what is called in their culture the tokoloshi. And I was like, what? Because my mother used to scare me with the tokoloshi. So it was lovely to get that back from the culture that is in Ireland now, but that links with my culture, but coming from the new community, if you wish. So I guess that enriched it, but it was a lovely kind of just aha moment for me.
That is lovely.
Just in relation to that as well, Fergus, we would have been open to exploring anything the learners brought to us, and I suppose that's what's important, really. Okay,
thanks. So there's a few people writing in. Thank you, fantastic project, fantastic presentation, really interesting. I'm not going to read out everything, we've got a couple of minutes left. Alison Wells saying, such a comprehensive course, thanks, we've learned so much. How long did it take you to put together all the material for the program?
Oh God, I shudder to think.
Don't be honest with your answer.
Oh God, like hours and hours each week, honestly, because I suppose I'd do it and then I'd see where that wouldn't work in the online format, so then I'd do it again. But it was so worthwhile because I'd feel quite confident now about other online projects. And once I located, identified and gathered the material I wanted to use, it was then about converting it to, I suppose, accessible format online. But I suppose the whole area is of so much interest to me. It was quite painless.
Great. Okay. Ella Coleman says, it looks like a fantastic project to have worked on. I think there was something in it for everyone. It was lovely to have included all family members in the course. Well done, ladies. Really enjoyed that. Thanks, Ella. That's for you two guys. Mary Conifrey is saying, really interesting. Thanks you both. Will a copy of the slides be made available? Yes. I'll send on the copies of both slides plus the video recording of this when we have it edited and ready. Okay. We're nearly there. We've got about a minute left. Kim Taylor saying, well done, ladies. Fabulous presentation. Amazing ideas there. Just want to ask time-wise, how long did it take you to put the 6 weeks together? As there are a lot of content in it. Okay.
Again, now maybe I need to look to my own time management, but I suppose there is such a wealth of information, even just on Irish folklore, that finding the right text kind of, I suppose, curtailed that and helped me focus. So the pool bag resources were fantastic. And what's really nice about folklore is that it does tend to appeal to all ages. So it's a great starting point. In terms of the other things that we worked in, like the time was spent finding the right colouring activities, time was spent trying to work out the best crafting. And again, there was finesse in that because the crafting had to be suitable for a 3-year-old and a 16-year-old. So it had to hit the middle ground. Yeah, there was huge time put into it. But like I say, it was very enjoyable.
But once one has it done once, you actually have it now as a bank of resources that one can use again. So it is the first time is probably the most time consuming, but after that, you now know better what will work. And you have to use it again.
And can I just say as well, the energy that I put into this, I got back tenfold because of the people involved. I cannot commend the children involved in this project enough. They were absolutely outstanding. They were so mature and they were so willing to engage, and the older children were so accommodating to the younger children. They got behind the silliness of the story reading. Like Baby Shark, I don't think is well known for its cultural significance, but at the same time, it was in there as a fun activity for the smaller children. And the older children, the mothers, everyone got behind that and all the actions involved. So I cannot praise the children and the mothers involved in this enough.
Thanks. Esther and Adele had planned to do out the whole Baby Shark song with the actions now, but just because of time, unfortunately, we're not going to be able to do that. Sorry, Adele and Esther.
Well, it was thematic because we built it into the week where we did the Salmon of Knowledge.
Excellent. So there's 3 or 4 more people saying thanks, great, fantastic, loved it. Kay O'Regan, for example, saying thank you, that was fantastic, well done. And we're going to have to leave it there just because of time. It just leaves me to say a really big thank you again to Esther and Adele for putting on and running such a rich project and for sharing it, so that now you around the country can try it in your ETB or your library or your county. So thanks so much, Esther and Adele, for fantastic presentations. And thanks everyone for tuning in. As I said, I will send on Esther and Adele's presentations and a recording of this video, which will be on the NALA YouTube channel. So thanks to everybody, all the best, and feel free to tune in over the next few days to the rest of our presentations.
Thanks, Fergus. Thank you, Fergus.
Thanks a million. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.